Coming up on this episode.
Dad had a stack of Playboys, and I was 6 then, and I still remember that feeling in my chest. It's quantities of porn and think you're going to be okay in the bedroom with your sweet, beautiful wife? Think again. Is how to get and stay free from porn. Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 5, Slaying the Porn Beast. We are going to shine a light on what pornography actually is doing to you and the world. And our goal is to help those stuck in its trap get free so they won't burn with the world. And the world is going to burn. Today's episode is brought to you by babylonexodus.com. Go there, sign up for our newsletter. We appreciate it. All right, let's open this matrix. So from about 1998 to 2006, I wrestled with this beast, and it was a true wrestle. I was addicted. Now, the devil and his adherents are going to say that it's not an addiction. It is completely an addiction, and we're going to prove that in this episode. But without getting too explicit, I just want you to know that I understand people that have a pornography addiction. I understand the highs and the lows of dealing with it and what it can do to a marriage, to your relationships, to the way your brain works. And so for that 8-year period, it was a true wrestle of my soul. But I did overcome it. And I'm proud to say that August of 2006 was the last time I ever searched out pornography. I've never since done a search for anything pornographic sexually. However, I see pornography all the time, and so do you, whether you're looking for it or not, whether you have a problem with it or not. I think by this episode, you're going to see that pornography is everywhere. But we're going to talk about explicit sexual pornography use and what you can do about it. Now, preparing for this episode was a little hazardous because whether you're just looking for stats on porn use or the topic itself, you could see things you don't want to see. So I'm only going to share with you articles and information that is about porn in a very scientific and condemnatory way. So don't worry, I won't be sharing anything explicit with you here. But we are going to have some real talk because you need it. Those of you watching this that are addicted, you're stuck down in that pit. You know what you're doing. You know who you are. And so we're going to get really real with you. And we're going to give you some information that hopefully changes forever the way you look at pornography and will spur you on to make the changes you need to make. Or for those of you who haven't been caught in the trap, that you'll avoid it. So where does this word pornography come from? The original word was pornographos, which means porn, which is prostitute, plus grahin, which means to write. So originally when the two words come together, it means writing a prostitute or drawing a prostitute. The consistent theme in all these definitions is that it has to do with prostitution or selling oneself in a sexual way. Now, what did Jesus Christ say on the topic of pornography? Well, you have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. End quote. So Jesus is saying there is this state of mind that you can engage in that's not only a breaking of God's laws, sin, but it's also a way that you feel towards another person or persons. So it's not just an act. It's a state of being and a mindset. We're going to get into this. Now, I used to be a free speech absolutist, a libertarian type of individual, and one phrase I liked, one quote that was attributed to Voltaire said, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." Well, I've come away from that. I don't think things like child pornography and sexually explicit material should be allowed, and yes, I do think that government has a role in that. Here's the challenge. We are the government. You cannot expect a small elected body of officials to police millions of what I call porn zombies. That's people caught in the trap of an addiction of pornography. They're porn zombies. They're not thinking straight. And so to have government control that, well, I support legislation to make illegal pornography. But yes, it is very difficult to know where those definitions lie within a constitutional republic, like how that would be controlled. So ultimately, you and I are the government. We are the ones that get to determine what type of society we have. Also, as a libertarian in the past, I used to say, well, government should stay out of people's bedrooms. I'm here to tell you that is deceit by the devil. What happens in our bedrooms is largely what determines the type of society we have. So government does have a role in that. And we just have to realize that we cannot separate public and private life. So yes, I'm advocating that people that create pornography should all be locked up. And that's for softcore porn, anything. You should be going to jail for that because you are a public nuisance and a threat to the decency and the morality of the republic. As John Adams said, the Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate otherwise, end quote. So John Adams said it correctly, that the Constitution of this country will not work for us if we are not moral or religious. All right, let's get into the subject of lust, because that's where I think all pornographic activity and visuals come from, is lust. I found this great article called The Cloak of Lust, and it was created on the International Journal of Sexaholics Anonymous website. It says, quote, "Lust takes on various colors and forms based on my experience in daily life, manifesting in many forms like food, fame, money, control, intimacy, or attention. The list is endless. The problem lies in my response to it." I really like this article, and this the way the lady describes lust. It's something that takes you over. She says as soon as it's indulged, it triggers an upheaval seizing control over my life, and I can't escape. Its overwhelming jaws tearing apart anything in its path. I know from personal experience that it takes over your being and you crave. And she listed a lot of forms that we can lust for, whether it's that craving that we can't seem to control that takes us over and hollows out our soul. So let's talk about some of the lies around lust and porn that we use. I want to share 6 lies that I could think of that goes into the things we tell ourselves to justify our porn use. See if you've ever used any of these if you're struggling with porn. Number 1, viewing porn is not adultery or fornication. Well, you've heard of the phrase becoming one flesh, right? And you know what that's from? Well, that's from the Old Testament. That's when Adam and Eve became one flesh by knowing each other, being sexually and literally being a part of Adam. Eve was taken with his rib, and she is physically one flesh with him. And so imagine instead of, as God intended it to be in the marriage relationship, that you are literally trying to become one flesh with a screen. What do you think that would do to your mind, to lie to yourself and use your body to try to connect and bond with an electronic device? Think that might cause you some issues? All right, lie number 2. I only watch straight porn. I want to tell you there is no such thing as straight porn. Let me ask you a question. If you're claiming that you only watch straight porn with a man and a woman, you're watching another naked man. You're watching his private parts. If you were to do that in real life, would you consider yourself straight, so-called? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. So you're lying to yourself to tell yourself I only watch straight porn, so it's okay. And the final point with that lie is you know you won't stick to that. It'll just get more and more extreme. And many people have gotten into other types of pornography from so-called straight porn by starting there. Lie number 3, it's good for me and my relationship. Oh, really? Have you ever actually seen somebody's relationship improved by pornographic use? And if you're using it, does your significant other know you're using it? If so, has that actually helped you? Did you know that regular porn use doubles the chance of divorce? Did you know that regular porn use also increases your chance by 1/3 of becoming abusive and aggressive in your relationships? Now you tell me how you're going to make that good for your relationship. Lie number 4. It doesn't hurt anyone. Have you ever heard of sex trafficking? Do you know about the single mothers who get into pornography? They're sought out in strip clubs. They often have children. Do you know about this? Have you ever looked into the rates of taking oneself out, ending life, done by the stars of pornography? I wouldn't necessarily recommend you go look up the videos on YouTube, but there are video compilations of famous porn stars that have taken their lives, and it's always by drug overdose, by using a weapon to the head, all kinds of things, violence, assault, and murder. And so the people that you're watching in those porn videos just might be dead. And the people you've watched that aren't, you might contribute to their future death or overdose or whatever it is. So you cannot watch pornography without harming your fellow humans. All right, lie number 5. And this is a big one coming up. It's just AI, so it's not actually hurting anyone. I want to caution you against this lie that because it's all computer generated, it won't hurt anyone. It definitely will hurt you. There is no loophole to using pornography. So get that lie out of your head immediately. It won't bring you happiness. And you'll have the same problems of bonding with devices and the screen. Sixth lie is it's an adult male problem, meaning it's dudes that watch porn. Wrong. I want to submit that just as many women watch pornography, but that often for women it's a different form of pornography. And we also see that children will see these types of porns that women tend to look at more than men, because men are more sexually graphic. But the stuff that women look like, they actually inadvertently share with their kids all the time. Can't wait to share that with you. All right, we're going to pause here. And I'm just going to shout out our Venmo. If you want to drop a tip for us, you can find me on Venmo. That's thefirestarter. Look for Thomas, the Firestarter. You'll see me if you want to drop a little tip for all this work. I'd appreciate it. Appreciate the help and support. All right, back to it. All right, point number 2 of this podcast. Let's talk about the size and scope of the porn epidemic. Now, granted, these stats are provided by third parties. I've tried to vet it as best I can. I can't really verify all this information, but these do seem to be reputable sources, so I hope they will be useful to you. And I know that I run the risk of being statistical, like it's almost too hard to conceptualize, but hopefully I can break it down to the individual level so that it's more relatable. And before I go into these stats too, I also want to warn you, there are liars on the internet called therapists, doctors, professionals, think tanks. They advocate for the use of porn in some of these articles. So I just want to warn you against that. There is no good use for pornography, but they will actually tout the pros and cons of pornography. Watch for that, because that's academia and science and the medical establishment lying to you. And just to showcase the lies that come out at you from the medical establishment, I want to share an article from the website Psychology Today by a guy named Michael Castleman, M.A. He is a San Francisco journalist, and he wrote a book called The Sizzling Sex for Life, How to Maximize Erotic Pleasure at Any Age. I would really wish that Mr. Castleman's search history on his browser could be exposed to the world when he publishes garbage like what he did. But anyway, this is what he says.
Perhaps you're familiar with pornography critics' allegations. As much as 30% of internet content is porn, and tens of millions of men, and some women, waste much of their lives in endless mind-numbing, relationship-killing, out-of-control binge-watching, which leaves their lives in tatters and their partners and families in despair. Actually, that's nonsense. Only 4% of today's internet is porn, and while a tiny fraction of men watches for more than 2 hours at a sitting, the vast majority of men and the women who account for 25% of the porn audience treat it like a coffee break. A brief timeout from daily hassles.
All right, I'm going to pause there. So he's saying it's no big deal. It's like a coffee break, and they hardly spend any time on it. These are lies. Going on with Mr. Castleman's blatant programming. He says, quote,
anti-porn women and the sex addiction industry are mistaken. Self-sexing is normal, natural, healthy, stress-relieving, and great fun. It's the foundation of satisfying partner lovemaking. Sex therapists recommend it as a part of treatment programs for premature ejaculation, arousal difficulties, trouble working up to orgasm, and recovery from childhood sexual abuse. If you have trouble enjoying sex with yourself, it's very difficult to enjoy it with anyone else. Yes, there's tons of porn on the internet, but so what? The vast majority of those who watch spend no more time viewing than the typical coffee break. The sky hasn't fallen. The internet porn is not a social crisis, not even close.
And then he concludes his article here with this P.S.
P.S. If you are among the tiny proportion of men with problematic relationships to porn, you can find help and support. Consult a sex therapist who employs cognitive behavioral therapy.
Now, this journalist is on the website Psychology Today, which is a source for people to find therapists. Or as he says, you can find a sex therapist. So you've got liars like this, and I'm calling him out. These are lies, and I'm going to give you a lot of stats to counter this. But anyone who says that, you want to treat sexual abuse-related issues, like maybe you were abused as a child, part of trauma, by watching trauma, because that's what pornography is. It's trauma. So here is a man on a psychology website telling you to deal with your trauma by watching trauma. That's what you're dealing with in this debate. Now let's counter Mr. Castleman's lies here. From the documentary Brain, Heart, World, but it was put out by the organization Fight the New Drug, says, quote, last year over 4 billion hours of porn were viewed on one website. 4 billion with a B. If porn really does rewire the brain in unhealthy ways, then what are the consequences? End quote. Think about this. How many people do you encounter on a daily basis that are perhaps stuck in the porn trap? I mean, really think about that. Pay attention. I'm not telling you to judge people, but pay attention to the people you meet in restaurants, at work. People that seem to have issues or there's something off about them. There's a good chance they are addicted to pornography and that it's rewiring their brain. And then think about the huge loss of productivity in our society. It's incalculable. And think about those of us who aren't addicted to porn, who aren't having our brains rewired and warped. We are having to pick up that slack. I honestly feel that a lot of the protests and things that happened in the last 3-4 years are partially due, when you see those videos of crazy college students and those poor people who are gender confused and that, I literally think a lot of it is just that their brains have been rewired by pornography. Because they don't act normal. They act crazy. But I don't think it's just that they are trying to be destructive to society. I think they literally have gone crazy to a point. And it's very sad. Now, in the stuff I'm going to share, I've got to change the R word to sexual assault. So just so you know, I'm trying to avoid that because I don't want to trigger people who've been through that. All right, I found a couple great articles from the website fightthenewdrug.org. The first one's called Why Today's Internet Porn is Unlike Anything the World Has Ever Seen. And I'm just going to share a little bit from that. It says, quote, Pornhub, one of the leading porn sites in the world, claimed that in 2019, they had 42 billion visitors, with 39 billion searches performed. That's 115 million a day, almost 5 million an hour, and almost 80,000 a minute. And that's just one site. To put that in perspective, in the time it takes you to read this article, that one porn site will have recorded more than 200,000 visits, according to their own estimates. As for 2019 uploads to the site, Pornhub estimates 12,500 gigabytes per minute, enough to fill the memories of every smartphone in the world. Together, the top 5 porn websites in the world account for more than 6 billion visits per month, nearly one a month for every person on Earth. The article goes on. With so much porn available, pornographers compete for consumers' attention by constantly pushing boundaries and exploiting taboos. According to the studies, analyzing the content of popular porn videos, it's estimated that as few as 1 in 3 and as many as 9 in 10 scenes show acts of physical aggression or violence, while about half contain verbal aggression. These studies also found that women were the targets of aggression or violence about 97% of the time. And yet another study found that 1 out of every 8 porn titles shown to first-time visitors to porn sites describe acts of sexual violence. Makes you think, doesn't it? Just how vile and violent pornography has gotten over the last 30 years. You got to get those clicks. You got to have those eyeballs. The last part of the article says this, quote, 30 years ago, hardcore pornography usually meant the explicit depiction of sexual intercourse, writes Dr. Norman Doidge, a neuroscientist and author of The Brain That Changes Itself. He says, now hardcore has evolved and is increasingly dominated by sadomasochistic themes, involving scripts fusing sex with hatred and humiliation. In our post-Playboy world, porn now routinely features degradation, abuse, and humiliation of people in a way never before seen in the mass media. Softcore is what hardcore was a few decades ago, Deutsch explains, the comparatively tame softcore pictures of yesteryear. And I think a good comparison is marijuana. Like, I'm sure the marijuana of the 70s wasn't near as intense as what we have today. That's why people can get addicted to marijuana, like they do pornography, because it's so intense. Now let's continue on with this theme about violence. This is going to get dark, but we've got to discuss it. On that website, there's also an article titled, Is There a Link Between Abortion, Pornography, and Insert Sexual Assault? It uses the R word there. You remember when you were young, your friend's dad had a Playboy? I did. When I was in first grade, I remember. My friend's dad had a stack of Playboys, and even at age 6, I remember looking at that with my friend and him making the argument, they're just muscles talking about a woman's breast. And that made sense to my young mind. It was logic. But at the same time, there was a feeling about it. I've never forgotten that. And I'm 50 years old now. And I was 6 then, and I still remember that feeling in my chest of something is different about this. All right, so talking about Playboy, the article says, quote, "The deceased Hugh Hefner, the misogynist Playboy founder who referred to women as objects, boasted in an interview that he helped push Roe v. Wade, the U.S. Supreme Court decision that, coupled with Doe v. Bolton, legalized abortion to birth in 1973 for any reason through the lower courts. In fact, at that time, the current self-professed feminist and darling of the U.S. Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, actually took the time to write to Hefner to thank him for helping Roe through the courts. Did you know this? Did you know Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was lionized at her death, wrote a letter to that wicked SOB, Hugh Hefner, to thank him for pushing for abortion? Sorry, ticks me off. All right, back to the article. Hefner's misogyny was no secret, but abortion was, and still is, so important to Bader Ginsburg that she was willing to thank an abuser of women for his part in it. Over the years, a number of women have come forward and spoken of their abuse by Hefner, including sexual assault. Legalized abortion is extremely useful to men like him because when one of the women or underage girls who is abused becomes pregnant, the best way to cover up the crime is abortion, get rid of the problem, and also the awkward DNA evidence. Now, the woman who wrote this article is in Ireland, so they had some legislation go through. So she's going to reference the Eighth Amendment, but it has to do with politics in Ireland. So she goes on to say, quote, "One recent study has shown that 63% of 18 to 30-year-old men watch porn several times a week. Of the 87% of 18 to 24-year-olds who voted to repeal the Eighth Amendment, this means that approximately 2/3 of them are regular porn consumers. In other words, and with no sense of irony or self-reflection, these male repeal voters supported the right for women to do what they like with their own bodies. However, these men also want the right to do what they like with women's bodies too, whether it be pornographic images they carry around on their smartphone or saved on their laptops, because it's her body, her choice, right?" So what I said earlier about what happens in the bedroom determines the society is so true. If you're watching pornography, the way you vote is going to radically change. And you're going to be okay with gay marriage. You're going to be okay with abortion. And that automatically leads to assault, sexual assault, and degradation of women and men and all those connected to it. And ultimately children. You cannot avoid it. The last part of this article goes on, quote, "Planned Parenthood has also been uncovered in its aiding and abetting in sex trafficking and regularly fails to report statutory and sexual abuse to the police. Former Planned Parenthood manager and sex education trainer Monica Klein has stated that human traffickers and pedophiles have a safe haven at Planned Parenthood." And here's the crux of the matter. There is a swath of abortionists who sexually assault their clientele during actual abortions. The U.S. group Life Dynamics has also written a report entitled "America's Carefully Hidden Sex Scandal" on the high frequency of sexual assault and rape by abortionists themselves within the clinics. In a society where it is acceptable, even legal, to kill preborn children with violence and dispose of their broken bodies with indifference, one thing is certain: women and girls will not be too far behind. If you really start to look into the porn industry, it is a factory feeder for abortion. So if you're watching pornography, you are automatically supporting the murder of preborn children. Now let's talk about youth, children, and how porn affects them. First of all, you adults who are watching pornography, I want you to just absorb the hypocrisy about watching pornography. You cannot get your kids to quit looking at pornography if you're looking at it. And you'll feel that. You can't speak with authority to youth if this is a part of your life. Also, and I'm going to say it, masturbation is a sin. You'll read so many medical sites and doctors who will say, oh, it's a natural part. No, it is natural for people to do it, like when they have never done it, as we explore our bodies. But we have got to be clear with youth that masturbation, even as a sin, it's also like grounding yourself to yourself. It's like a closed circuit. So if you're masturbating while you're looking at porn, you are putting all of your sex energy into yourself. It's a form of self-idolatry. It's not healthy. And the body will naturally take care of those features when you're a teenager. You'll have wet dreams. Like, your body will sometimes push that out because you're growing and your body's under extreme, intense hormones. But the point is, we should not encourage you to masturbate. We should tell them they should not do it. And I'm dead serious about that. And I'll go to the mat with anybody on that. There was another article on fightthenewdrug.org, which is called 20 Stats About the Porn Industry and Its Underage Consumers. Once again, if you're using porn, you're contributing to this problem with the youth, just like I was all those years ago. It says, quote, according to a nationally represented survey of U.S. teens, 84.4% of 14 to 18-year-old males and 57% of 14 to 18-year-old females have viewed pornography. That's a lot of underage exposure to an industry that claims to be adult entertainment. But not everyone is complaining about porn's pervasiveness. Check out these real tweets we found. So they got these screenshots of all these tweets, and this is what some of these people are saying, and some of them are girls. They've blurred the faces and the name, but they show what they actually tweeted. It says,
porn, quote, porn doesn't play games. Porn doesn't text back slow. Porn respects the something and gives you exactly what you ask. I love porn.
Another one says,
I love strippers, cam girls, and porn stars. Don't ever think I don't.
Here's another one.
My Tumblr is 50% porn and 50% being a band fan girl. What more could you want? Follow me.
Another one says,
I love when I'm on Tumblr in class and porn shows up on my dash.
Another one says,
Twitter has become my one-stop shop for everything from networking to porn. What more could a girl want?
And then the final one says,
ugh, so much porn. I love the internet.
So obviously those are young people with flippant attitudes about it. But if you're an adult looking at porn, are you really any different? No, you're just not vocal about it. You're hiding it. All right, so the article goes on with some stats here, and I want to share these. There's quite a lot, but I think that we need to know these, just how serious the problem is. It says, quote, according to a recent report, 75% of parents believe their child has never encountered porn, but of those children, 53% reported that they had in fact seen porn. Now, keep in mind with these stats, it's probably always underreported. So, yeah, maybe 75% of the parents are that naive, but it's probably 75% of the kids have seen porn by now. All right, another fact. The adolescents who had been exposed to porn, 28% were first exposed by accident. 19% were unexpectedly shown pornography by someone else. And 19% searched for it intentionally. I think this is where a lot of adults, you know the kind I'm talking about, which will abuse children, they show porn to kids. You see this theme over and over, and they also get them inebriated. This is how I encountered hardcore porn when I was a teenager, as my friends, neighbors, dad had a videotape. And that's how I first saw it when I was 16, I think. All right, another fact. Despite the fact that porn can be wildly unrealistic and often glorifies violent sexism, one recent survey found that over half of boys and over a third of girls reported believing that pornography was a realistic depiction of sex. An analysis of 22 studies from 7 countries found that internationally, the consumption of pornography was significantly associated with increases in sexual aggression, both verbally and physically, among males and females alike. Our kids are getting very violent watching pornography. And you've seen it. In the real world, you've seen where it shows up. I submit that a lot of the teenagers and the college students which were out there protesting the last couple of years were hyped up on pornography and full of violence and demons. Another fact, a UK survey found that 44% of males aged 11 to 16 who consumed pornography reported that online pornography gave them the ideas about the type of sex they wanted to try. Kind of wanting to try out the violence that they see. It goes on. I probably won't share all of these. Let's just do a couple more. Porn is a global estimated $97 billion industry, with about $12 billion of that coming from the United States. But probably 90% of the world's porn content coming from the U.S. A couple more. In 2019 alone, the equivalent of 6,650 centuries of porn was consumed on one of the world's largest porn sites. And the last one out of every 8 porn titles shown to first-time users on porn homepages described acts of violence. Survey results show that 1 in 4 18 to 24-year-olds listed pornography as the most helpful source to learn how to have sex. Well, it would be the one that's the most exciting, obviously. All right, so now we've seen how this is affecting children. Let's talk about women, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, and I don't have a problem saying it. Women, let's not forget that the original definition of pornography, literature with prostitution, applies to the visual and to the auditory, meaning music. I know that a lot of moms follow influencers and other famous celebrities on Instagram. In fact, I think that's the number one form of pornography, or romance novels and movies and influencers on social media. Like, anybody who sells anything kind of sexually related is a prostitute and engaged in pornography. If you want to get into debate what the lines are, well, let the Holy Spirit guide you. And what would you be comfortable watching and listening to in front of your kids? Well, a lot are too comfortable listening to this content from these prostitutes. And I'm talking about selling sex, dependency through drugs and other things, and the Illuminati. You don't believe in the Illuminati and that there's secret societies and combinations in this society? Well, you might as well go read your scriptures and it might change your mind. But people that are selling it for money, ladies, don't drive around in your cars with your young teenage sons and daughters listening to music from Billboard 100's top selling artists. Artists like Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar, Drake, Nicki Minaj, Ariana Grande, Dojacat, Morgan Wallen, Olivia Rodrigo. Yes, even country music genre now has so much pornography in it and destructive and unhealthy advocation of human behaviors and relationships. It's all very sexual. So ladies, watch what you listen to around your kids and what you follow. You're just as addicted to pornography, but it's just not the sexually explicit kind that you might have caught your husband or your boyfriend looking at. It's still all the same. It takes you away from healthiness and from God. All right, the last thing, and I'm going to say this especially to the young men, erectile dysfunction. Your thing will stop working, and that's the way it is. I'm going to say that this was an actual problem that normal intimacy and, what would usually turn you on didn't turn you on anymore because it wasn't extreme. It wasn't that intense stuff that you get on the homepage of so many of these trash satanic websites. In fact, I'm going to tell you about this. I found a study called, quote, Pornography and its Impact on the Sexual Health of Men. Trends in Urology and Men's Health. So this is talking about the male genitalia and what pornography does to you. It will make you not work, to say it in a nice way. It says, quote, a comprehensive 2016 reviewed a reported sharp rise in the rates of erectile dysfunction, delayed ejaculation, decreased sexual satisfaction, and diminished libido in men under 40 years old during sex with a partner, with the traditional factors that once explained these difficulties now are appearing insufficient contributors. So what they're saying is that people under 40 now are getting ED, erectile dysfunction. This never used to happen. It never used to. It says, quote, erectile dysfunction has been traditionally viewed as an age-related problem, and men under the age of 40 years do not carry the commonly associated risk factors such as obesity, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and so on and so forth, smoking, all that. Psychogenic ED is the most common diagnosis in the younger age group, typically related to psychological factors such as depression, stress, general anxiety, or performance anxiety. However, none of the usual correlative factors associated with psychogenic ED appear to adequately account for the rapid and manifold increase in the sexual difficulties observed in these young men. So, young men, if you think you can go into marriage in the next few years consuming mass quantities of porn and think you're going to be okay in the bedroom with your sweet, beautiful wife, think again. And then here's just some general things that have to do with men and overall porn usage. It says, quote, men who use porn more often tend to report less satisfaction with their sex life. The use of porn may potentially reduce sexual satisfaction due to real-life partners not living up to the idealized images seen online. Disappointment if a partner does not want to recreate pornographic scenes. Disappointment stemming from the inability to obtain the range of sexual novelties seen in porn with a real partner, and pornography being chosen over sexual intercourse with a partner. So you're wanting to look at porn because your wife won't do the things that you've seen in it. Well, here's a revelation. Most women don't want to do, or naturally don't want to do, what is seen in pornography. Anyone that's healthy and well-adjusted, the kind you want to marry, they don't want to do what's done in porn. I won't get into the explicits, but you know what I'm talking about. They don't want that. They want to be loved and respected and treated like they're a queen. The last thing, a possible negative effect or long-term porn use on sexual desire may stem from changes in the responsiveness of the reward system in the brain to sexual stimuli, which becomes more active as a result of porn-associated stimuli than with real-life sexual intercourse. The mean age of respondents was 31 years. The typical media for viewing porn was the internet, either on a computer, 72%, or a smartphone, 62%. Weekly porn use varied, with 26% using it less than once weekly, 25% using it 1 to 2 times, 21% using it 3 to 5 times a week, 5% using it 6 to 10 times, and 4% using it more than 11 times a week. And you're seeing these people in restaurants and at public places and in your church and in your school, at work. People are trapped in this garbage. And I feel for them because I was there. And I had one thought, and then we'll move on to the final point, is that abusing yourself with pornography and masturbating is literally idolatry. You're worshiping yourself. Pleasure at all costs, even though you know this is destructive for you. It's idolatry. It's making sex your god. All right, and then the final point of this broadcast is how to get and stay free from porn. Now, I'm not a therapist, and I don't claim authority on these matters. I'm just sharing what I did and what experts say. I invite you to pray and consult with professionals. All right, with my story, I told you that I have not seen porn since 2006. I have kept myself clean from looking for anything, any kind of nudity, any kind of sexuality since 2006. That's almost 18 years. I remember August of 2006 was the last time I searched. So I want to share what I did to kind of help me get over this and how I've stayed clean that long. The first thing I would say, because that's a great track record, almost 18 years of being clean of that. It's a great track record. The first thing is every time counts. When you are on social media or you're online or wherever, on TV, and you see an image, turn it off immediately. Turn away from it. Sometimes you can't avoid this stuff, but you cannot search for pornography one time. You have to just stop. Now, I know some professionals might argue with that, and it's likely you're going to relapse. So I'm not condemning you or saying you won't relapse. I'm also not giving you an excuse, and I'm not reducing all the shame around it. Some of it, but you've got to realize that every time you search for it or you linger longer than you should, then you are encouraging yourself to relapse back into it. If you do relapse, don't give up. That is so important. The devil wants to shame you. You want to shame you. Maybe your spouse wants to shame you. You have to realize this is about you and about your addiction. The other thing I did was I finally went before God and I said, God, I have this weakness. I mean, I go for weeks sometimes, or even months at times during that. It wasn't like 8 years of straight usage. It was that wrestle constantly, still being involved and active at church and doing duties there and trying to be a good dad and working. You know, it wasn't always like I was on that statistic 11 times a week. That's not how it went, but it was that constant wrestle and coming back. Just realize that your sex drive every 5 to 7 days, apparently, our factory, you know, down there fills up and it wants to release. So just know that this is going to keep being an issue and that your body, which your brain's been rewired and your body's used to being satisfied, now you're withholding that from it. And it's going to be difficult. But going to God, saying, I've got a weakness and I need help, was a huge thing because I was finally saying, I don't have control of this. I've made many resolutions and I've stopped many times. I finally went in weakness and meekness to God and said, I need help. Fortunately, sometimes maybe you've experienced this getting caught. I got caught by a friend and my spouse at the time, and those were hugely impactful because I knew that that was going to be a serious issue, and the consequences were dire. So hopefully you don't get there, but if you keep this up, you will get caught. So just know that. There will come a point of exhaustion where you finally wear out, and I see this as common. You'll be doing it for so long, and you've given in so many times and betrayed yourself that exhaustion will naturally work in your favor at some point. And then there was this thing that I noticed. At the time, I became part of a civic organization. I was the president of a local forum, and we met weekly, and we discussed things like principles and prosperity, and we discussed the gospel. We discussed all these things. Being the president, I found myself standing in front of a group talking about truth all the time. And I knew right away that I could not be that person in front of the crowd who was not living what I was preaching. That was huge for me. So there were some personal family things, which I won't go into, that spurred me, motivated me, but also being in front of people. So what I want to encourage you to do is get involved with something that takes time away from when you would be hiding in your room or wherever you look at pornography. Try to commit to something. All right, and then there's something else to realize, and I've realized it in the years since, is that you've got some issues inside you that are way beyond just pornography. Mental health, trauma, PTSD, something going on in your spirit, in your body, in your brain that is triggering you to go back to this comfort. Because pornography does bring comfort for a while, right? You feel like you escape, you do your business, you release, you feel relieved, and then that feeling of sadness comes back. But you're looking for comfort and you're looking for solace. On that article I read earlier about the cloak of lust, it says, quote, "I don't need to wear the cloak of lust to make the negative emotions and feelings disappear. On the contrary, I need to live without that cloak, dealing with the reality of my pain and fears. Confronting and dealing with them is better than dying because of them. Instead of a constant escapism, I am now home. Instead of facing things alone, I have a God. I have a fellowship which provides monitoring and support, and I have a safe haven that shields me from drowning when emotions flood, and I'm grateful for this," close quote. I think this article was written by somebody in Iraq. So this is a worldwide problem, and that person understands what you're going through. And so I know that I've been really harsh about porn and its evils, but I also want to be encouraging here. So let's talk about what Jesus Christ and the scriptures have to say about these things in our days. I want you to have victory over this challenge. And I'm going to give you a few resources before we wrap up here. In 2 Timothy, we read, "In the last days, perilous times come. Men shall be lovers of their own selves." Masturbation is a lover of your own self. "Covetous, boasters, prouds, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection." Is it natural to be attracted and attached to the screen? "False accusers, incontinent, fierce, despiser of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God." It says, "For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with divers lusts." And I'd say silly men as well. They creep into houses. Porn has crept into your house, meaning your family. Also in Romans we read, "God gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves." Another reference to, one meaning is masturbation there. "Who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator." Men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another. In the pornography, do you see unnatural use of men and of women? Men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves the recompense of their error. "And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness." Reprobate mind means that you go crazy. And we saw that on the street during all these protests and the way that the country is going. Reprobation. It doesn't work. The mind breaks. And Jesus Christ finally said, He answered and said unto them, "Have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh? So they are no more twain, but one flesh. And whatsoever God hath joined together, let no man put asunder." End quote. I'm sorry, I was just thinking about my sweet wife and becoming one flesh with her, and that we are one like Adam and Eve, the rib of Adam. You know, an ancient meaning of the word Adam is soil or dirt, and the name of Eve is life. So it's the taking of soil and life and merging it in a beautiful, godly, divine union. And so, I apologize, I just got emotional there thinking about my wife. But she and I are one. And you cannot be one with your wife or husband if you have let other people into that sacred union. You're breaking your union. And you know better, and I love you. There was a sermon called "Christ, Mighty to Save" by William Nicholson from 1862. He says, Christ came to save. Man has lost God's image, his purity, his favor, and communion. He has broken his laws. He is a traitor and condemned to perish. This is the state of man, proved by Scripture. Man is so awfully ruined by sin that the most striking figures are employed to represent it. Man is stated to be diseased, leprous, blind, naked, in beggary, a debtor, a prisoner, a captive, and as dead. I'll pause. You remember all those people Jesus healed? They're not just physical maladies, they're spiritual. Goes on, this ruination is universal. It has ruined the whole of man's body and all the powers, purity, and happiness of his soul. It has made man, therefore, spiritually impotent. He cannot deliver himself. What a loss has man sustained. It is enough to make an angel weep. Now going on, he says, Jesus was not only an excellent and holy man, but was God. The design of his mission was to save. For this sublime purpose, he was delegated. He was consecrated as the foundation. His name is Jesus, the Savior. God declared him to be his son. He was manifested to destroy the works of the devil, like pornography. I added that. Christ has done all that was necessary to save man. He conquered man's spiritual foes and rose to heaven as a mighty conqueror. He is mighty to save from the defilement of sin. He can take the plague of sin away and heal the leprosy of the soul. His might or power to save includes elevation to glory, body raised, united to soul, and both glorified. Close quote. Do you think people in 1862 had the same spiritual maladies that we have today? Do you think they had them in the time of Jesus Christ or in the time of Adam? This is the story of the human family. If you're trapped in pornography, just know you're not alone. And people have been going through this for millennia. So here's what you can do. First of all, pray for strength. Ask God to guide you. Confess to your partner. Confess. Pray that God will soften their hearts. Maybe you need to do it in the presence of a therapist or a professional or a clergy member. Regardless, you should reach out to professionals and clergy leaders to guide you in this. You need help. You need it. If you're a youth watching this, talk to a clergy member, a therapist, with your parents, if you dare. If not, you can do it in private. I know there are people that you can trust, that are safe people, and you need to go tell somebody today. If it's a friend you trust, you have somebody in your life that you can confess this to, that can help you and can pray for you. Now, I'm unaffiliated with them, but I like the website fightthenewdrug.org. They have this great documentary called Brain, Heart, World. It's a 3-parter, and it shows you what porn does to your brain, to your heart, and to the world. And it's fascinating. It's well put together so that even a teenager would probably enjoy it. And then there's 2 other resources. If you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you can go to our website, and there's a page about treatment for sexual addiction. It says, quote, support groups such as LDS Family Services, Pornography Addiction Support Groups, Sexaholics Anonymous, and other 12-step groups have proven to be important, even necessary for many individuals and couples. 12-step support groups should not be seen as a substitute for therapy. Both are beneficial, but they are different in their focus and benefits. They should be seen as complementary, neither one replacing the other. That was another link I had, sexaholics.anonymous.org. That's, if you're just in a bad way, get some help, because if you've been in this for years, like I wrestled for 8 years with it, I just know that you're probably exhausted and you want out of it. Now, I hope this has been useful for you. I want you to know you can do that. You can put some of that energy that you're putting into shame and hiding and sneaking, and you can start loving yourself by doing something about it. So I pray for you. I want you to know I was inspired by God to do this. This wasn't my number 1 choice or number 10 choice for a podcast episode topic, but I was convicted that people need this. And so release some of that shame. Go get help. And I promise you, I will pray for you and that God will help you through this. And you will be a hero on the other end of this. You'll look back and you'll see all the things you've learned. And then before you know it, 18 years will have gone by since you sought out this filth, and you will be amazed and extremely humble and grateful. Well, that's our episode. What do you think? You can check us out on all the socials like Instagram and TikTok, or you can get us on the video channels, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey. You can even go visit our website, babylonexodus.com, to support the program. Like I said, we're on Venmo. If you want to give us a tip for this effort, I appreciate it. I'm at thefirestarter on Venmo. All right, as is tradition, I want to read you a poem, a lyric I wrote from a song called I Want This More. This song was written to talk about how we have the natural and the spiritual man within us, and we often want good and bad things at the same time. So the song is I Want This More, meaning I want the spiritual. And it goes like this, quote, he used to hit the town every night, party and drink every lie in sight. Now he leaves at the end of day to go home and with his kids play. He used to hide with filth in dark rooms, trapped in porno glooms. Now he strives for a virtuous life, keeping clean for the woman wife, gaining back his sight. She used to wear tight clothes to work, tell herself it doesn't hurt to flirt. Now she knows that she needs to honor her man in word and deed. She once sought the world's praise, so she walked in worldly ways. Now she knows power for women lies in the divine feminine, on earth as in heaven. All right, thanks for tuning in for this episode. This is The Firestarter. We'll see you next time.